When you're starting out in jiu-jitsu, you're gonna spend a lot of time on bottom defending. In today's video, I'll teach you a submission system you can use to turn the tide and get back on offense. Stay tuned to the end for some games you can play to sharpen up those triangle skills. Now I'm gonna look to enter this triangle from the knee shield position. This is one of the most common guards you'll find yourself in as you're starting out in jiu-jitsu. First things first, I want good structure. So I'm going to lay my knee across his hip line and I'm going to lock my ankles in place. Make sure that your top ankle is over your bottom ankle for maximum leverage. Now for my arms, my top frame is going to be over his shoulder and under his jaw. As I flare this elbow, it keeps him away and keeps him from crashing weight down onto me. Now once I have my frames in place, it's time to attack. So I'm looking to open up this space to lace my triangle. One of the first steps I can take is getting a nice deep overhook on his top arm. Typically your opponent will be posting your hip in some manner, so all I'm gonna do is grab the tricep and I'm going to flare it out and drop him into this pocket. Now I can reach a deep overhook, placing weight down on his shoulder and forcing it to this outside hand. If you need a little bit of extra tension on the overhook, place your overhook hand to the inside of your thigh, reinforcing it and pry barring against his shoulder. This is gonna force his outside hand to the mat and open up the window for this triangle entry. Once I get his hand down, I like to keep my other hand monitoring the situation as I pull both knees to my chest. Once I get the knees to the chest, I clamp down, keeping weight over his shoulder and controlling his posture, and then I throw my top heel over his outside shoulder. As I touch my heel to my knee and pinch my legs, it does a great job of controlling his upper body. Now, if you need a little bit of help controlling this posture, maybe he's starting to build up, what I'm gonna look to do is hug my outside leg with my outside hand, pulling both my knees tight to my chest and controlling his posture. Once I get into this clamped position, I can begin lacing my triangle. So I'm gonna take my free hand and I'm going to grab his wrist or his bicep, wherever it may be, and I'm gonna use it to just keep that in place. This allows me a free path for my bottom knee to pull tight to my chest and then fire over the top. Now, once I get over the top here, I'm going to lock both ankles over his spine, keeping his posture down. I want to make sure that what will become my choking leg is on bottom. The reason being, his shoulder is pressing up against my thigh on this side, and if I don't have it on bottom, it's going to pop this lock open as he postures. And so instead, I really want to reinforce this choking leg, so I'm going to grab his head to keep him down as I switch my ankles into the correct position. Now I've gathered my triangle guard and I'm ready to attack. Now I've made my way to my triangle guard, it's time to run down our main path and finish this triangle. The first obstacle I need to deal with is his inside arm. So I need to pass it across to lock my legs. The first thing I'm gonna look to do is keep his posture controlled, ankles locked tight, knees pinching heavy. Now I'm gonna work my way to a 2-on-1 on this wrist, locking it tight to my chest with my elbows locked into place. Now, if I wanna pass this across, I need to hip up to make space. So I hip up to the ceiling, making space to pass it across my center line into the near hip. Now, as I look to pull him back in the pocket, if I pull him straight down, it's very easy for him to build frames against me and maintain posture. So as I get to the top of this hip press, I'm going to pass his arm and look to take an angle on my way down. So I use this scissoring pressure to hang weight and kick my hips out. Then I can pull him back down into the pocket, and it's much more difficult for him to pull this elbow free. Now, as I make it down at my angle with his arm across the center, I want to keep this angle locked in place. So I'm going to take my secondary arm from the wrist and I'm going to reach either under his secondary arm or under his secondary leg. This is going to maintain my angle for me. Now, as I look to transition to my figure 4, instead of letting go with my legs and going to lock, I'm just going to kick my top leg through until I find that figure 4. Then I lock my legs in place, shin deep, and look for my finish. Rather than pinching my knees together, utilizing the weak hip flexor muscles, I'm gonna think about scissor kicking. So my primary leg kicks through across the neck as my secondary leg pulls tight towards my chest. When I do this with the lock, it finishes the deal. Now time to solve the first problem you'll run into along the way. In this case, I've locked up my triangle, but his shoulder is stuck in the pocket. Whether his arm's across or not, this is a problem. I can't properly squeeze his neck and finish the choke. And so instead, what I'm gonna look to do is switch to an armbar. So in this case, I grab the wrist with both hands, controlling it once again. I'm going to keep my top leg back heeling across his shoulder line, controlling his posture. And then I'm going to swing my bottom leg over his face. Now make sure as you do this, you don't make a ton of space for him to retract that arm. Make sure you just barely graze his ear and cover his face. Now back heeling with both legs, I use my 2-on-1 to turn his thumb away from my hip, and then I begin to extend at the hips. So keep your heels back heeling and extend your legs through to finish. Now for the second problem you'll run into. In this case, I've gotten to my triangle guard, but my opponent has hidden his primary arm under my hip. Now it's gonna be a lot of work for me to get a hold of this wrist and pass it across. So instead, I'm gonna attack it where it is with the Kimura. Now before anything, I'm going to find his wrist with my outside hand and just press it into my hip line. This makes sure he can't change his mind as I set up my attack. Then I'm going to control his posture with a hand over the head, and I'm gonna look to switch to a reverse triangle. So I take my outside leg and I lay it across his shoulder line in the crook of his shoulder, and then I take my primary leg and I lock a figure 4 over the top. This reverse triangle provides a tremendous amount of control over his shoulder line and his posture. Now once I get here, I'm looking to attack this arm, but instead of digging with my upper body, I'm just gonna use the power of my legs to press him away from that arm. So I just press him away and isolate that arm. As I get here, I can look to reach underneath the elbow with my other hand and lace a shallow Kimura grip. Now again, instead of trying to use my upper body to move his arm, I'm just going to use my lower body to begin rotating through to get that tap. Now for the last and the most common problem. In this case, I've worked to my triangle guard, but my opponent begins to posture away from me. Now, as my opponent looks to posture up, he's typically going to place his hands somewhere on me and post himself up. So as he posts up, while he did gain posture, he now has no hands to defend a punch choke. So I'm going to place my opposite hand in a fist between his trachea and his muscle, and I'm going to look for the choke. Now, as I do this, I want to limit his defense, so I trap one of his hands with my free arm, and I force him to defend only with that outside hand. Now, if he doesn't defend, I'm just going to use the power of my legs to pull him into this punch choke and get a tap. Now, typically what's going to happen is instead of choking, he's going to look to defend with his free hand, and now he has no post on this side. So as I trap one hand and threaten with the other, I can break his posture over that arm. Then I can recollect the head and get back to work. Now for some games you can play to sharpen your triangle skills. Now in this case, I'm going to begin with his arm passed across in my triangle guard with a hand on the head. The only way I can win is by finishing this triangle choke. The only way he can win is by breaking my triangle guard apart. So he postures up, he breaks the lock, he wins. Now the second game is all about controlling position and working towards the finish. So in this case, I have my triangle guard locked in place, but his arm is not yet across. So I need to do the work of trapping his wrist, passing it across, and working towards my finish. So I can only win by finishing the choke, and he can win by escaping position. So he postures up, breaks the lock, and he's out. Now this last one is all about working your entry. So in this case, I'm going to begin in my clamp guard with my heel and my knee touching and hugging my own knee. I win by gathering my triangle guard and holding for 3 seconds, and he's going to win by posturing up and out of this clamp guard. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more no-gi instructionals, and level up your no-gi game by joining our online academy on Patreon.